Hi, everyone. I like the music. The music's good. I have to say, after this morning, I am just so intimidated. The ladies who spoke were just incredible. And I was thinking, what can I add to this? Because I think you covered all the important points. So I'm going to be a review session, essentially, and we'll just tell it through my story. I'm really honored to be here. This is amazing. And to see such an incredible group of women, I'm overwhelmed. So, a little bit about me right now. I work for Asian Development Bank, and I'm the Security Operations Center Manager. What does that mean? We cover global issues that could affect the bank and how we operate in the 40 countries that the bank operates in. We right now are building out a brand new state-of-the-art security operations center. So my job is taking these young ladies, and most of my analysts are young ladies, in fact, all of them are right now, and really developing what they're able to do. Until now, they had no guidance, no leadership. There was, they were just kind of playing it by ear. And so now what I'm seeing is this development of them, and they're developing pride in what they're doing, and really reaching and being creative and coming up with good ideas about how we produce the information that we're going to get out to people, and how we present it to them. So one of the most important things to me, one of the most satisfying things I can do, and that I've done throughout my career, is to help to develop the people around me. I remember when I was in the Army, and somebody would say to me, if you can't go on leave and leave your people to do the job, then you're not doing the job right. So I want to be able to leave that job. I want to leave that seat empty. Because if I can't leave that seat empty, I can't move up to the next seat. So it's really important to me to develop the people around me and to see the pride that they have in the growth and see them start to really excel and actually start to build their careers as well. So, my military career. First of all, I'm 59 years old. I'm a Canadian. I'm retired from the Canadian military. I've served in a number of places, mainly in high-risk places after I was in the military. But I was really, really lucky in my military career. I started as a radio technician, and I started in West Germany. West Germany, yes. I'm a Cold Warrior. So giving my age away there for sure. And that was a really exciting time to be there. That things were changing shortly after I left. The wall came down. But while I was there, I visited Checkpoint Charlie. I got to see things that other people wouldn't have got to see. And I got to do things like this big weapon up here. I got to fire it, and I fired that and blew up a Russian tank. There wasn't anybody in it. It was on the range. So what happened after I left West Germany? I came back to Canada, and I was offered to go to Royal Military College as an adult student. The Canadian military has opportunities for non-commissioned people to become commissioned officers, and I became the first female Army intelligence officer in the Canadian military. So there I am with General Fred Sutherland. And you know what's brilliant? This was a long time ago. That was in 1987, and 1991. And still, his wife is in touch with me on Facebook because her son was in my class. So, social media is really an important part of what we do when we're traveling. It's really good to stay in touch with people and, get to see what they're doing and where they're going. And the number of times I've been in places where I've been in the airport and I just say, anybody in Dubai? And I end up having dinner with somebody who's on the way to Yemen or something, So I use social media a lot. Anyways, I digress. There was West Germany, Checkpoint Charlie, and then there I was with General Fred, who was a fantastic leader, and I was really proud to be under him. So my military career after I was at military college, as I say, I graduated and I became the first female Army intelligence officer, and they sent me to the French Brigade in Quebec. So I was an Anglophone, I was a lieutenant, it was a captain's job, and I was a woman, and there had never been a woman in that position before. So it was kind of interesting for me. One of the things that I discovered in the military is that we have to really embrace our gender. And that sounds kind of funny, but the women that were around me that were senior to me in the military didn't have the experience necessarily of having other women around them. So they didn't know how to act. So sometimes what I found was that we acted inappropriately. So we try to be like the guys. So I'm in a brigade where it's all men, and we're drinking too much, we're swearing too much, we're trying too hard to be tough. And when I went to the French Brigade and I was actually in charge of the unit, it's weird, it's like I found my femininity. I recognized how important this was, that I was who I was, that I wasn't trying to be something I wasn't. And that with that, I was able to lead more effectively, I was able to run a better unit, and really develop, again, the guys around me. And I think that was something that they were missing. They weren't seeing that willingness to develop them. So I'll tell you a story. There was one guy, Corporal Bilodeau. Corporal Bilodeau was working with me, and he wanted to go to Serbia. We were deploying some troops to Serbia. So I didn't want to send him. He wasn't the right guy to send. So I had to tell him, Corporal Bilodeau, your dreams are dashed. You're not going. So I took him into one of the conference rooms, and I said, look, I need to talk to you about this and explain to you why I'm not sending you. And he was almost in tears, but he could see that was affecting me. So he could see I cared. And I said, let's make this an opportunity for you. Let's make this an opportunity. The guy that's going, his position's going to be empty here. And this is a chance for you to show what you can do in that next rank level. So sure enough, he stepped up and he got promoted. And right now, he's a chief warrant officer, still serving in the military, which is the highest non-commissioned rank. And we're still in touch on social media. But it just made such a difference in his life that somebody talked to him and gave him some concept of how to move forward and cared enough to talk to him and tell him why something was or wasn't happening. So again, developing our people is so, so important. So help to develop their confidence, help them to reach for the stars. And this is going to be a theme throughout my talk. I just can't say enough about helping the people around them to become confident and recognize what they can do. And embrace who you are. Don't try to be something you're not. Okay, so what happened after the military? I served 21 years, and at some point I had to retire. So my ex-husband was getting posted to Warsaw, Poland, to the embassy, and I went with him there. And as a strange aside, I ended up working for the Warsaw Business Journal, and they very soon after made me the regional human resources manager. Now, I didn't have a background in human resources, but as a military person, we kind of do. That's kind of what we do. We've got, we understand the development of people around us. And in those days in Poland, it was an emerging economy. And so in Poland in those days, it didn't matter if you had the qualifications or not. If they thought you could do the job and you were in the organization, well, come on down, you got the job. Congratulations. So suddenly, I was covering human resources for Warsaw, Budapest, and Prague. So I was traveling, really starting to, get my traveling feet on. And meeting people in each location, and I had to learn the labor laws. Can you imagine learning post-communist labor laws in 3 different countries? It was amazing. It was not an easy task, but it was fun. The people were great, and I got to travel. And I also had my dog with us at that time. We got a dog while we were in Poland, Princess Sobieska. And Princess Sobieska was an Australian shepherd, and before she passed on, God bless her, she traveled to 15 countries with us. So she had her own little passport because she had her, her vaccinations and everything in there. And yeah, she went to 15 different countries. So that was pretty good for a dog. Now, one little strange aside, while I was in Poland, my military career kind of crept in, because my old general talked to their general and said, hey, my staff officer's there, and she'll be really useful for you while you're moving into NATO. They were going to be joining NATO. So he introduced me to them, and they hired me as a consultant to help prepare their intelligence documents for NATO. And they actually made a law in the Sejm, which is the Polish parliament. They changed the law so that I could actually have a security clearance. So I was the first Western foreigner to have a security clearance in Poland. Not sure what that fits into the story, but I thought it was interesting to tell. Okay, so what I learned from being there, I started to embrace the differences, learn from them. You know, there were things that I was suddenly living in a whole new culture and thinking, you know, why are they doing things this way? But rather than judging, it was learning to go with it and finding my passion and following it. You know, my passion had been the military, and so now I had to find a new passion and go with that. So next we come to the war zone adventures. All right, so when we came back to Canada, we were living in a little town called Petawawa. It means loud water in Algonquin, one of our native languages. We had loud water out back of our house. We were right on the river, and the rapids would come by. But it was right around the time of 9/11. So my ex-husband was deployed to Afghanistan, and when he came back, it was like we both found our calling, because we were both in the same branch. We were both intelligence officers, and so he decided he was going to get out of the military and go and do some more work in Afghanistan. And at the same time, I was offered a position to go to Côte d'Ivoire. So the war zone adventures started. I ultimately ended up spending 7 years in Afghanistan, 2 years in Pakistan, and I was in a myriad of other countries. But Côte d'Ivoire was really a learning curve for me. That was a place where, you know, things don't always go right in our lives, and that was a place where I was really learning about what I was doing in this new role as high-risk security. And one story that kind of exemplifies it, I had driven from a place called Bouaké to Mans on the Liberian border, and we were doing an assessment of the office there. And when it came time to drive back, I asked the drivers, we're driving from Mans to Abidjan, and I said, you know, do you know this road? And they said, of course, madame, we know this road. Well, it turned out they hadn't driven it for about 8 months, and there were 37 checkpoints along that road. So those checkpoints were everything from paramilitary to rebels, to government forces, to police, to international forces like the French Foreign Legion, and criminals. So every checkpoint was like a nightmare. Now, I was the only foreigner in the car. You can tell by my skin and my hair, I was fairly noticeable. And we came up on one checkpoint. And I was sitting behind the driver, and there was a gentleman talking to the driver and asking him for our papers and that sort of thing. And I looked out the window over here, and this fellow was beckoning me over. Come out of the car. He wants me to come out of the car. But I could see over here there was a hut, and there were a number of guys standing around this hut. And I knew in my heart what was going to happen if I got out of the car. So I waved to him. I just smiled and waved. Okay. Oh, hi. I'm playing it dumb. I'm not going to get out of the car. My doors are locked. So he comes over to my side of the car and tries to open the door. So I reached across to the guy who was talking to my driver, and I was so scared that I switched to English. And I said, excuse me, why does your friend want me to get out of the car? And he says, oh, madame, you speak English. And he says, so do I. So I said, and very well, too, I might add. You know. And at this point, the driver recognized what was going on. Really? 5 minutes left? I've got 10 on here. So anyways, I'm going to have to speed this up. So anyways, the moral of the story is that the driver reached underneath the seat, and he pulled out a gross of condoms and handed them to this guy and said, un cadeau pour vous. because we were doing an HIV education program, so we happened to have a gross of condoms under the seat. So anyways, I got saved by a gross of condoms, and that was a big security lesson for me. So I want to say here, just taking a look at these photos, the rose is the Rose of Kabul. Kabul was a very important place to me. I learned to see the beauty in everything, and the roses of Kabul were amazing. The Faisal Mosque was also an amazing place in Pakistan, and I got to see things that other people don't get to see. In Kabul, stories are, I learned about respecting the people around me and really, embracing who they were and recognizing that they have skills that, we would come in as Western security people, and some of the Western security people would kind of look at them like, well, we know better, and so you got to listen to us. But these guys were at war. They'd been at war for years, so why would I not listen to them? Maybe they had problems and there were some development issues, but it didn't mean they didn't have the experience or know what was going on. So with that, I was actually able to really develop a relationship. And how did I do that? Everybody says to me, what was it like being a female in a position like that as chief of security in Kabul, Afghanistan? Well, let me tell you, it was an advantage. And why was it an advantage? I could go to their homes. I could meet their mothers, their sisters, their daughters. I could sit and have lunch with them. And nothing engenders trust like meeting people's families and engaging with them. And as a result, I would go into their offices. I could walk in any time and get whatever I needed to have happen. And it really gave me an advantage being a woman in Afghanistan, which shocks everybody. People are not expecting that. But again, we just learn to go with what is given to us and use it to the best of our ability. So the last blast, this was when the last big situation before I left. I was planning to leave in July of 2017. On the 31st of May 2017, I was going into my shower and all my windows blew out of my house. The whole diplomatic enclave was affected. We immediately responded. Now, what happens when we're near the security officer? Everybody else is running to the bunkers, and we have to actually start taking action. We don't get time to be scared. We don't have that opportunity or that luxury because we have to start checking to make sure that nobody's been injured. I called the compound next door, which was a big American compound, and I said, I've got some people who are injured. We couldn't get them out to the hospital. And he said, we've got 9 dead. So I just, we had to just take care of our own at that point because we weren't allowed to leave to go out of the area. And ultimately, there were 165 people killed and over 400 injured by about a 4,000-kilo bomb that went off that was in a water tanker at the entrance to the diplomatic community. And that was when I decided that it was time for a life change. Go figure. I've been doing this for 14 years, and it was really time to move on and do something else. And so I've taken that into the training realm. Training, teaching people what I know about security and what I've learned over the years, really living it. I mean, I lived in places where other people don't get the chance to go. So the last blast was pretty important to me. Respect is gold. Don't let others define you and learn to see the beauty in everything. That's what I took away from this. I couldn't go in there saying what an ugly place. It wasn't. There was so much beauty, whether it was people, roses, buildings, and even strange architecture. If it looked odd, sometimes there's beauty in that. It doesn't matter. Find that and take that with you. So my travel adventures, very quickly, I took my niece. I've been all over the world. I've been to 73 countries, and I'm sure that there's people in here who've been to more. I've lived in 9. I took my niece. She was 16 years old, and I took her on a 6-week safari to Africa. We went to Kenya, Tanzania, and to Egypt. And so I've got some photos there of that. And what I did was that I also took her to a refugee camp in Dadaab in the north of Kenya so that she could meet people who were not the same as her. so she could start to be exposed to differences in the world from her nice little comfortable community in Canada. So it changed her, and she's got the travel bug. God bless her. So one of the things that's so important before you travel, do your research so you can enjoy the journey while you're there. If you're thinking, geez, do I have to do this or that, and you're trying to research it while you're on the ground, you're going to spend all your time researching. Do it beforehand. Travel without fear, love the journey, learn, learn, learn. But if you've done your research, the travel without fear becomes easier. And this is really important. We talk about respecting other cultures and respecting the people around us. We also have to respect our own boundaries and make sure people understand what they are. Our boundaries are really important when we travel. So it's okay to say, I gave the example to somebody today that people would ask me, what do you make? What's your income? Well, I'm Canadian, and to me that's really offensive to ask me that. So I would just say that. I'm sorry, I'm Canadian, and that's just kind of offensive in our culture, and so I prefer not to answer. So we can do it respectfully, but let them know your boundaries. That's probably one of the best takeaways I can give to anybody who's traveling. Finally, peace through sports is my tagline. Through all my travels, I actually really related a lot of my travel to sports. And what I discovered was in low socioeconomic environments and also in conflict zones and post-conflict zones, that it was really hard for athletes to get opportunities out of the country and to develop themselves a little bit further, to get onto the next level of their athletic performance. So I started a small sportswear brand called the Diesel Diva, and that was me flipping tires with long fingernails. But Peace Through Sports became the tagline, and it's now become a movement. I currently sponsor 3 social projects in favelas in Brazil, in Rio, and 1 in Lahore, Pakistan. Right now you can see in the photo here, this was the opening of the gym in Lahore, Pakistan, in a slum area. And these kids were so excited to have a place to go that was safe for them. And the value of peace through sports is that when they're learning about sports, they're learning values. They're learning about teamwork, integrity, honesty, work ethic. There's so many takeaways from being involved in a sports environment that it's really important to have that. And I think getting it at the grassroots in those social projects is really going to help to change the culture or change the war culture and start developing different ethics within the community. I've just put a picture of Bashir Ahmad. He's a hero of mine. He's a Pakistani American who served in Iraq. He gave up a very nice home in Maryland to go back to Pakistan and start Pakistan Mixed Martial Arts. And so through him, I was able to sponsor some of the fighters in Pakistan. One of them, he fought an Indian guy. It was great on an international stage. And at the end of the fight, although the Pakistani won, they both raised their flags, switched the flags, and raised the flags of the other country. And that was amazing. So there's one of the gyms in the favelas in Rio, lots of ladies in the community. It's not just kids, it's for women as well. And they came out to the gym and participate in physical activity, which is, they never had the opportunity before. So it's really good to offer that. One last thing about Tribe Diesel Diva. There was one lady, and I was speaking about her earlier to somebody. She's a power lifter from UAE, hijabi, and she wanted to participate in the Olympics. And she was at that level. And she was looking for sponsorship to go and train in the US, so I helped her, and she was able to go and train. She didn't ultimately make the Olympic team because of an injury, but her teammate, another female, got to go to the Olympics for UAE as a power lifter. And ultimately, this is what's the amazing thing, is Amna al-Haddad, I don't know if you've heard of the book Rebel Girls, but Amna al-Haddad eventually became one of the stories in the book Rebel Girls, which is a fabulous book for young girls that tells inspiring stories about women. So, what's my takeaway from this? I was talking to one of the fighters the other day that I help, and he said, when you're there, make sure they know that you're not just a badass because you lived in war zones and you did hard work. He said, you're a badass because you help people to achieve their dreams, to chase their dreams. You inspire them to keep after them. And he said, and the people you help will never, ever forget that you did that for them. And they're going to start giving back. And you are great, and you should tell them that you are great. So I'm telling you, you are great. And that you can give back, and that giving back is part of my lifeblood. That's what I do. That's what gets me where I'm going. That's what makes me who I am today, is giving back. And I'm just blessed to be able to do that. So I give back when I can, and if I stumble, I make it part of the dance. So I don't know where I'm going from here, but I promise it's not going to be boring. So thank you very much.